Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. Today we are doing our Week 7 picks for Big 12 and other top matchups of the week. As always, with me for these segments, I've got Adam. Adam, thanks for joining me again.
Thanks, Trevor. Awesome to be here every time.
How was your weekend with no BYU game?
A little lonely, a little less stressful, but man, there was some good football on.
There definitely was. And I think we are going to get to some of those. So before we do, I want to recap and see where we're at with our picks. So you've got a healthy lead on me. We'll see how it goes after how the results of week 6 picks went. So
That was a tough week.
It was a tough week. So first looking at our Big 12 matchup.
Oh, man.
We did not do so well there.
Anyway, that was tough.
I don't know if there's a whole lot to say. Obviously, I think if you're a Big 12 fan, rooting to not have both Texas and OU in the Big 12 championship, I think this was not the result you wanted. And then there's a surprise there with Kansas State, TCU, and looks like your faith in Grimes was misplaced this time.
Quite. Unfortunately, that Baylor team, man, they've got some serious struggles to get through this season. But I love the Big 12 and how unexpected it is. The underdogs come up big time in week 6, and that's fun. That's fun to see, even though it demolished my picks for the week and I went 1 for 5. That's fun football.
You got to love all the chaos that ensues in college football on Saturdays. And that's one of the things we love. And, in a lot of the results, and we'll get to that, but I mean, just thinking of like the Miami game, for example, just all the madness that can happen. And unfortunately, we didn't pick that one because it was against Georgia Tech. We weren't too interested, but here's our pick for some of the other games. And do you have any major takeaways from these?
Oh, again, not a great week for my picks on that side. You did a little bit better on that. The Notre Dame loss really surprised me. That team is not who I thought they would be. So that was surprising. I did like to see the Wyoming win. I think that's a good team in Laramie. So just some quick takeaways, and I do feel like Texas A&M missed a shot. It feels like everybody's close to Bama this year, but can't close the door. And props to Bama for being clutch on the road and being able to pull out some tough wins. So big for Alabama that week.
Yeah, I think that's when it comes down to, I don't know if coaching is the difference, whatever, but when when you're in those closer games and to be able to pull out those close wins over and over. I mean, we saw that with TCU last year, and it really, I really think that, you could say, well, it's chance, or, it just came down to this or that. But when you're able to do that consistently, I think it says a lot about your team. I agree about Notre Dame and Wyoming. Yeah, I think we both nailed that pick. I think we were impressed with what we saw so far in the year. And I don't know, it would be interesting to watch. And bummer with William and Mary. They started out pretty strong, but near the end, they just got overpowered by UVA, who has not been able to overpower anybody.
They gave them a run for their money. I'm happy for the Hoos. They needed a victory this year, so glad they picked up that first one on the year.
And Mizzou played LSU close, so I mean that was a fun.
They did, yeah. That was a close game. That was tight. I really thought Mizzou was going to pull that out, and LSU with a clutch performance in the pick 6 at the end. LSU could not stop Mizzou, so I thought Mizzou was going to go down and score, and the defense came up strong. So that was a fun game. A lot of fun football.
Yeah, so much. And then I just forgot. I mean, I know Georgia had looked vulnerable, but I think after those most vulnerable games, the good teams come back with kind of a chip on their shoulder. And unfortunately for Kentucky, they were the next team on Georgia's schedule. Same thing with Bama after they struggled with South Florida. Well, not the same. It wasn't quite the same butt kicking, but you saw the same thing. Them really kicking into another gear the next week. So,
yep.
You got to watch out for those bounce back games. So. Here's where we stand now.
You've gained on me, Trevor.
A little bit. I'm starting to think you're letting me win to keep this interesting. Either way, we're both coming down. Well, you're coming down to earth, and I've come down a little bit too after this last week. Our
Yeah.
percentages have taken a hit with some of these as we get deeper in the season, as we should, as the games and matchups continue to get tougher. As we're in conference and we see some of these games that are going to be really hard to pick this week included. So here's our picks. So for this week, normally we start with BYU. They didn't play this last week, and so we don't have conversation about last week's game. So we'll just roll through in order. And this game already happened. We're recording Friday morning, so this happened. So we locked in our picks ahead of time. And Adam, who did you have?
I had West Virginia.
Okay, I definitely had Houston on this one. So no, I'm kidding. I had West Virginia as well. Yeah, what a crazy wild end. So I actually caught a lot of the end of this game, and I just thought it was funny because West Virginia gets this almost last second touchdown. They think they're going to win. They get flagged for excessive celebration. And I was like, well, that's never good because you're giving them a shorter field. And
with just seconds left. I mean, yeah, 12 seconds. And I will confess, I committed the cardinal sin as a college football fan. I saw that touchdown. It was late. I turned it off. And I said, 12 seconds left. So I am seeing after this touchdown for the first time right now, because I thought West Virginia won it. I'm like, sweet. I picked correctly. That was a close game in Houston. We're done. So I am waiting with bated breath to see what happens after this highlight that they show.
Okay, here we go. It was wild. I mean, they made the cardinal sin on this Hail Mary. You go up, there's a pile of bodies, and he tries to intercept the ball.
Oh no. Oh man, that is awesome. That is awesome.
So after last week, and actually there've been a few this season where I've been like, normally like, wouldn't it be cool if, this team were able to do this or that or pull this out? And you're like, the odds are low. And I've been rewarded so far this season more than not, I feel like, with wild action. Never, don't celebrate before it's over. These guys need to cool it a little bit.
Oh, wow. Look at that. That is crazy.
They've shown that if there's time on the clock, the game is not over.
Good for Houston.
Yeah, the first of the new four to get a win over a Legacy 8 Big 12 school.
Yeah.
So we'll see if we'll be able to keep that rolling this weekend, since he's got a shot at it against Iowa State. What do you think is going to happen there?
I'm leaning Iowa State just because of their defense. They're riding high off of the TCU win. I'm really surprised at the FPI on this, and I think they're going to swing and miss, because even though it's at Cincy, and I'll tell you, in the Big 12 play, home field advantage has been a serious advantage. I mean, it really, look at what Houston just did to West Virginia. So I'm going against that trend because I think Iowa State's defense is going to be good against Cincinnati in the red zone, where Cincinnati has continued to struggle. Cincinnati has all the tools. It's got to be so frustrating to be a Cincinnati fan. We've been there, right? It makes me think of some of the early Robert and I 2.0 years where we could move the ball, but we just struggled in the red zone, and it took a couple years to figure that out. That's where Cincinnati is, and I think they'll get there because it is a high-powered offense, but not against Iowa State. Iowa State is too good, and I think Cincinnati is going to kick a bunch of field goals, and that's going to be the reason they lose.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I just look at it and it feels like Iowa State has finally figured out how to score the ball. Granted, I don't think Oklahoma State, I mean, that we'll get into them, but still putting up points. This was a struggle at OU, and they obviously their defense didn't look so good, but they were still getting above, 220 points in their game. And I just think, I look at Cincy, I mean, they do have that OU game in common. I know it's hard to go against Cincy after this bye week. It's at home. Two teams that certainly have their own issues, but I'm also leaning Iowa State on this one. I don't feel good about it though.
I don't feel good about any of my Big 12 picks now after what happened.
This one's interesting. So Oklahoma State looks like it's hard to say if they've really finally figured something out, or if they just caught Kansas State looking ahead a week, and were, had the good game plan for the right team, or if this is something that they can sustain. So what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, you look at Oklahoma State and they got two horrendous losses, just jaw-dropping losses. But outside of that, they found ways to win. And so it's hard to say. Boy, Mike Gundy is such a good coach. I'm shocked that the FPI says this is 50-50. I thought Kansas would be heavily favored, but you take out Jalen Daniels and all of a sudden it's a coin flip. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State at home and say they have got things figured out. If Jalen Daniels played, I go with Kansas all the way.
Yeah, you're right. That does seem to be a big contributing factor to this, is who's coming in at quarterback. But they've shown. I'm blanking on his name. Is it Bean, the
Mm-hmm.
backup? And
Yep.
he's been competent. He doesn't add quite the same flair, but he's been pretty competent. And yeah, Gundy's a good coach, but so is Leipold. So I'm still going to stick with Kansas. I think top to bottom, they are a better team and they have more things figured out. And so I don't know, maybe OSU comes in thinking they figured it all out as well and patting themselves on the back and get a little dose of reality. Okay. So here's the game we really care about, BYU at TCU.
Yeah. This one's fascinating. I've been listening to some of the TCU podcasts and trying to get a beat on Hoover as the backup coming in. I hate playing a backup quarterback. I really do, because you just don't know, especially where TCU's offense has been struggling this year and they need a spark. He could provide that spark. From what I've read, he's not as dynamic with his legs, which is good for us. That's the only way teams have been able to run on us lately, is with the quarterback. And so I think that's a positive. But he's got a great deep ball. He's got a good arm, highly ranked quarterback, new, so we can throw a lot of different schemes at him. They got a great running back in Imani Bailey. So boy, it's a tough matchup to predict. I think the biggest question for BYU is, can they run the ball? Because TCU's run defense is porous, and their pass defense is incredible. I mean, their secondary is locked down, and which is matches up really well against us because our strength is throwing the ball. And we haven't been able to run the ball against anybody. So do we come off the bye week having made improvements in that run game? I do think BYU has improved every game. And you see some of these teams that are getting better as the season goes on, like Iowa State, like Oklahoma State. And so are we in that bucket? Because I think people rightfully view us as not a very good 4-1 team. A good team, but not necessarily as good as our record would say, because we've been opportunistic. So to me, it comes down to the BYU run game. Can we move the ball on what's been a bad run defense in the past? If we can, I think it'll open up enough for Slovis. Another thing to watch, the TCU special teams has been horrendous, and we are an opportunistic team. Does that open the door for us? So that's kind of my thoughts and analysis on the game. Overall, I feel like we're going to come up just short here because it's at TCU. I have us losing in a close one against the Horned Frogs, but it should be an exciting game. I think we're predicted to lose by 5.5 or 6. I think we'll cover that. I think we'll keep it really close, but I feel like TCU pulls it out in the end.
Yeah, so I had looking ahead for the TCU game, guest on with Clint Foster this week, and he was talking about the several occasions where they've had backup come in for TCU and really show out. And so and when he's had a full week, this isn't their QB goes down in the beginning of the game and then they throw in somebody who's not ready. He's had all week to prep, and so I don't think you can just say, oh, we've got a backup quarterback and this is going to be cake. They just lost to Iowa State and West Virginia, but I do think it is going to be a good matchup. I don't feel confident either way. I think, like you said, it's going to be close. It's going to be a tough matchup. But I think a lot will come down to, as you were saying, are we going to be able to take advantage of, the defense has not been their strong suit, but I have to think that they are going to push it on the ground and rely on the run game. And that's something that we can do, is shut that down and force them to beat us with their arm. And we'll see if this quarterback is up to the task. I think if this becomes a higher scoring game, I think that's an advantage for BYU, which it could be. Our offense has struggled a lot, and then all of a sudden picked up big chunk plays and scored quickly. And so if that's the case, I think BYU would be able to pull away theoretically. I mean, nobody knows. I still think this TCU team is going to be a tough out for anybody, but I am going to be, have faith this week and go with BYU pulling out the win, but I'm not, I gotta believe. So
That's good. That's it. I think we'll know pretty quick if we come out in the first quarter. We can rattle Hoover. We look crisp after the bye week. We make improvements in the run game. I think that plays really well in our favor. But interestingly enough, Satake teams have only won one game after the bye in the last 5 years. So they don't come well. They don't come off that bye week very strong, and you really need to in this circumstance. You got to improve the run game. You got to come out crisp. And so we'll see. BYU has steadily improved in a lot of aspects this season. That's been good to see. They brought in so many transfers, and you hope over the season they start to gel and play better. But we'll see. I think this game will tell us.
Well, I have to hope that we're coming out feeling, healthier and getting some guys back, some key guys for this game. We'll see if that's the case. Okay. Kansas State at Texas Tech. This is another really tough one, I think, because they're two teams that I'm now starting to question. Who are they?
Yeah. I thought I knew who Kansas State was, and who knows? Who knows now? I thought the Mizzou loss was kind of a blip. Mizzou looks pretty good this year. Took LSU to the wire, and then Kansas State just falls apart at Oklahoma State, and that happens. I mean, that happens in conference play. You have a bad game. You have a bad night. But Texas Tech is looking strong. Looking back over Texas Tech's schedule, though, they have the admirable loss to Oregon where they really pushed them. But besides that, they don't have any quality wins. They haven't beat anybody that's really strong. They beat Houston and Baylor, who have been the bottom two teams in the conference. I don't think you can say that about Houston anymore. But those wins don't look great. And so because of that, I'm going to go with Kansas State. This is a total coin flip. It's at Texas Tech. I don't see Kansas State dropping the ball 2 weeks in a row like this. I think they come in angry. And I don't think Texas Tech is quite as good as they've seen the last couple of weeks because they've been playing lesser competition. But boy, who knows? I mean, as we've seen already this week, anything can happen when you're playing on the road.
Yeah, I had the same thought process in all this, but I do think, Texas Tech playing at home, I think they are figuring some things out. I do like their chance in this, but I'm also realizing that I'm picking Texas Tech, but I'm also realizing I just said earlier in the game, you got to watch out for those bounce back games. And Kansas State just had an embarrassing loss, and I know that they're going to want to erase that. So it's going to be interesting. And maybe Kansas State comes back and says, hey, that was a fluke. We really are a contender in this conference. So should be a good one.
If Texas Tech wins, they've got me worried when they visit Provo because we need that one. We got a tough October schedule, and I had early on in the season when Texas Tech looked rough, I had kind of slated that as a W for us. I don't know if they come out and beat Kansas State, they're going to be on a roll coming into Provo.
Yeah, and maybe I mean that's all the more reason BYU has to get this game this weekend against TCU, because then after you get Texas Tech. It is in Provo, but and then you got Texas, which looks like a very tough one, obviously. Yeah. So, all right. So here is probably the game of the weekend in now out of Big 12 conference. We got Oregon at Washington, 2 top 10 teams.
This is awesome, and I'm sad it's at the exact same time as the BYU game because this is going to be such a good game to watch.
Don't
two
you love
great
these Big
teams,
10 matchups?
right? Yeah. The Big Ten's always got the good ones. The Pac-12 is going out with a bang. I'll give them that. Poor conference has been mismanaged for so long. They are at least given a good farewell tour. But this is going to be awesome. have Washington winning just because it's at home. Um, but we're going to see. I think whoever wins this goes to the Pac-12 championship game, goes to the playoff. I think there's a lot on the line here because whoever wins here, I think is going to win out. USC has looked vulnerable enough that I think they lose to either of these teams. But I'm leaning towards Washington to break through because they're at home. That's a tough place to win. If they were at Oregon, I'd go with Oregon.
Yeah, I felt like it took a while for Washington to get a lot of recognition. There's, I don't know, I felt like they were just kind of going under the radar this season, and I don't know. I've been really impressed. I haven't watched a whole lot of games, but in the highlights and everything, and just looking at their scores, they've been very impressive. So, like you said, it's at home. I got to go with the Huskies on this one. And here's another tough one. Two teams that have been good at moments in the SEC, but have also come up short. So this is another tough pick. What do you think?
It is a tough pick. This is a coin flip because these are two teams that have a ton of talent. I really like both of them, but as you said, they've been so inconsistent. And I thought A&M had Alabama on the ropes there and couldn't close the deal. I'm going to go with Tennessee in this one. Mostly because I'm smarting from my pick for the Aggies last week, and on the road, I don't think they can do it.
Yeah, I think that game against Florida left people kind of wondering about Tennessee, but I still think that they are a very good team and that they'll be able to, especially at home. All right. USC versus Notre Dame. These are two teams that I feel like have been overrated and that I don't have a lot of confidence in. And another, if you squint, it almost looks like it's another Big Ten matchup. But
We might get there. We might get
yeah.
there. So I every year I feel like Notre Dame's overrated and then they underperform. I didn't this year. I really thought they were there. I fell for it. I fell for the fool's gold. First time in a decade, I thought, oh, okay, they're not going to disappoint this year, and they've just come up bafflingly short. USC, I think, has all the talent in the world. I really like Lincoln Riley. I think he can put it together. I'm going with SC in this one, even on the road, because I feel like SC has struggled through enough close games and come out on top. That they're ready to turn a corner. This is going to be really high scoring. I feel like this is Caleb Williams defending his Heisman type of moment out there at Notre Dame, and he'll have a big game.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think this is going to be a high scoring game, and I think that's going to advantage USC. So I think they pull this one out. Again, I think they're a little bit of a pretender, a little bit overrated. Once they start playing some of these tougher teams, I don't think their offense is going to be quite as high flying, but I don't think Notre Dame is one of those teams that's going to shut them down. I could be wrong though. As we've shown. So speaking of chaos and all this, we've already alluded to Miami this last week and just not taking the knee and just the chaos that could ensue afterwards and how, that drive from Georgia Tech.
Oh my goodness.
That was just impeccable. So Hurricanes probably should have won that game. Does that, this easily could have been a 2 5-0 teams matching up. Would that make you look at this matchup any differently, or what do you make of this?
So it would make me look at it differently because really the sports psychology side, that's not just losing a game, what Miami did. They lost it in devastating fashion. Um, that is one of the toughest ways to lose a game. You've got it. You've got the win in hand. Snap the ball and take a knee. That now you're in the running back's head. You're in the quarterback's head. You're in the coach's head. How do you overcome that? And so could this be a comeback moment where Miami says, we're going to put that behind us? If they were playing a team not as good as North Carolina, I'd do it. I hesitate to go with North Carolina because I feel like Mac Brown has underperformed with some really good teams the past couple of years. So because of that, it's hard to pick North Carolina, and that's why I say if last week hadn't happened, I would have picked Miami. Not because of a reevaluation of talent, just because of the mindset of Miami going into this game. That's tough, a tough loss to overcome. I think they get a bit of a hangover, and I think North Carolina gets them at home with the win this week.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I actually went back and looked at it, and Miami hasn't really done much against anybody. I mean, yes, the other Miami beat Cincy. A&M is not a bad team, but you know it's looking maybe a little less impressive than kind of nothing. And then that loss last week, whereas UNC's had Pitt maybe isn't who we thought they were going to be, and maybe none of these teams are who we had they had the potential to be. But I guess my point is, it feels like UNC's proved it a little bit more against tougher competition, A&M excluded there. So I agree. It's at home. It's going to be that was a very tough loss. So I think UNC is able to get this one. But I think people will be watching.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
see
till the end.
right to the very, very end. Okay. So Mizzou at Kentucky. These are two Eastern Division teams that want to, normally bottom dwellers that are, trying to shake things up in the conference. Who do you think is going to win this one?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I feel for Mizzou. I'm going to go with Kentucky, and I feel like Mizzou is their record is not going to reflect how good they are because I think that's a good football program. They're on the way up. They're competitive now in every game, and I feel like Kentucky is going to win this one. Now, had Kentucky pulled off a miracle upset last week, I think this is a good trap game, a letdown game after riding high, but. It's a bounce back game for Kentucky. I think Kentucky's a very, very good football team. They got trounced last week because Georgia woke up finally and started playing some big boy football and playing up to their potential. And I think Kentucky bounces back in this. They defend their home turf. They're going to come away with a win. And like I said, I feel for Mizzou because I feel like their record is just not going to reflect the potential of that team. That's a very good football team.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Mizzou's solid, but I think Kentucky's got the edge there, and probably in coaching as well. So, and it's at home, bounce back. You said it all. So I think Kentucky pulls this one out. And then the last one, another two top 25 teams, another Pac-12 matchup in their final season. I don't know. What do you make of this one?
I'm shocked that FPI is so down on UCLA in this because I'm going to pick UCLA on the road against Oregon State. I don't trust Oregon State yet. I know they beat Utah at home, but I just don't feel like Oregon State has shown out to be a great football team. UCLA had an excellent game last week. It feels like Chip Kelly's finally, hit the ground running with this offense. They've got a freshman quarterback who's starting to play up to his potential. And so to me, that impressive win against Washington State last week for UCLA makes me take them in this game. And I feel like they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I guess for me, what's still lingering is not so much Oregon State's win over Utah, but UCLA's loss against Utah. Yes, it was at Utah, and yes, their defense is stifling, but they only were able to score 7 points against a defense that should have been on the field a lot. That defense should have been exhausted, and the defense scored one of those touchdowns. So, I mean, it's not like Utah's offense, or was it two of them? I don't know, but it's not that. I
No,
mean,
Utah got a touchdown in that game. Yeah.
so it's not like their offense was playing lights out and they just struggled. And maybe that's not, maybe that's an aberration. And again, Utah's defense is really that good. So maybe I'm not giving them enough credit, but I was just, at that point, I've just kind of sold my stock on UCLA until they prove me otherwise. So I'm going to go with the Beavers at home.
Okay.
So it's good. We've, in a tough matchup, we have some disagreements here, as we should, as you would expect to see. So it is going to be quite the weekend and of college football. I really look forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be a good week.
Fortunately, I'm going to be on the plane for some of it, which is good because then I can just sit and watch as long as there's a TV screen on the plane.
That's right. Nothing else to do.
But I'm going to miss, I'm going to be driving home during the middle of that BYU game. So hopefully catch the end of it. But
yeah.
Anyway, so Well, thanks for hopping on, and good luck with your picks this weekend, and we'll see how it goes.
All right. You too. Thanks, Trevor.